Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Yeah, so good morning again, everyone, and welcome to the session. I think I'd like to talk a bit today about the 5 Khandhas. That I just touched upon a little bit in the meditation. It's another way of looking at our reality, and so we can kind of feel out our experience in these 5 different ways, and yeah, there's a beautiful sutta I'll share with you on this topic. There are many suttas on the 5 Khandhas, but this one's particularly, I don't know, it feels particularly relevant somehow today. Today I'm feeling not very well, and I'm getting older, and so are we all. And you know, it comes up again and again for us, doesn't it? You know, physical issues, sleep issues, dietary issues, all sorts of issues around health. And yeah, so this is a sutta, the one I'm thinking of right now, where the Buddha was in a place called the Bagha country. Bagha means broken, so I think that's quite interesting. I often think the place names in Buddhism are interesting, and they just give a sort of sense somehow of the place. And this was a little place called something, I can't quite remember. The connotation is it's a place of a medicine place. It's a place where maybe medicines are to be found. I don't know. It has medicine in its name. I remember that much. And the Buddha's staying in this broken country, the Bagha country, by a crocodile pond. In a deer park by the crocodile pond. A good place to practice mindfulness, maybe. And somebody comes to see him, probably a group of people, bringing along a very elderly gentleman. And we don't know his name in the sutta. We don't get his name. He's called Nakula's father, Nakulapita. And this happens sometimes in the suttas. There's obviously something we don't know about Nakula, but Nakula was obviously better known than Nakula's father was. So all we know about him is that he was Nakula's father. Nakula means mongoose. So I don't think it means he's the father of mongoose. Mongooses. I just think that's a name. But anyway, Nakulapita comes to see the Buddha, or talks to the Buddha, and he says, you know, I'm really old and sick, and my body's falling apart. Could you give me some sort of teaching to help me in my practice, to help me to live, you know, with this situation, to cope? how do I deal with this old age? And the Buddha really encouraged him. He said to him words to the effect of, well, you know, actually, yes, your body is a source of suffering for you now, but let's face it, Nakulapita, these bodies are always a source of suffering. They're all falling apart. Everyone's in the same boat. If we think, the Buddha said, if we think even for a moment that these bodies are actually healthy, then we're very foolish. So that's really interesting to me. The Buddha says different things to different people, you know, but in this case, my sense is he's kind of empathizing and helping this older gentleman to feel he's not alone in his suffering. We're all heading in the same direction if we're not there already, of decrepitude and physical issues. And then he went on to say to Nakulapita, you know, just remember that you may have an unhealthy body, but you can have a healthy mind. And this is the important thing to consider. And Nakulapita was really pleased to hear this teaching, and it cheered him up. And he went away feeling quite buoyant. It's the impression you get from reading the sutta. And he had a meeting on his way home with Sariputta, a great disciple of the Buddha, Arahant, and teacher in his own right. And Sariputta maybe even followed him, I don't know, but he said to him, you know, what happened for you today when you went to see the Buddha? And Nakulapita had a chance to recount his encounter with the Buddha. And he remembered it. He remembered it all. And Sariputta said, oh, very good, very good. Did it not occur to you to ask the Buddha what he would advise, you know, in order to develop a healthy mind? And Nakulapita said, no, that didn't occur to me. But my goodness, what a good idea. Wouldn't that be good to find out? Could you tell me? How do I cultivate a healthy mind? And Sariputta said, yes, I'd like to tell you how to do that. And so he gave him this teaching. And basically the teaching is on the 5 Khandhas. And so Sariputta went through one by one, starting with the body. He said to Nakulapita, you know, a foolish person, a person who doesn't really pay much attention or show much interest in the teachings of the Buddha, such a person is probably quite likely to be of the view that this body is mine. It belongs to me. I don't really exist separate from this body. And so whatever happens to this body is of great importance to me. And it's a cause of great suffering for me if it's not functioning properly. And I have to worry and stress about this body. And, you know, spend a lot of time looking after it. He said in the same way, a foolish person will consider that feelings are my feelings. They belong to me. I identify with them, and I have to act upon them. So, you know, I'm constantly trying to get pleasant feelings to come my way or to continue pleasant feelings that have arisen. And I have to work hard to get away from unpleasant feelings. And this is of great importance to me. And in the same way, perceptions, all that I perceive around me, these are my perceptions. They're true and right, and I have to act upon them. I have to react to them in order to, you know, be safe, look after the body, look after the mind, take care of myself, I have to do a lot of work and be guided by my perceptions, give them much importance. And in the same way, a foolish person will consider that my thoughts, my ideas, my memories, my views and opinions about things are mine, they're right, they belong to me, and they're important, and I must act upon them, and I must be guided by them. And I need to spend all my time paying attention to them in order to know how to get through life, take care of myself. And finally, the fifth khandha, a foolish person, Sariputta said, considers that this consciousness, this knowing, this ability to exist at all is mine. It belongs to me. And I have to be guided by it in all things. And whatever my consciousness produces for me, whatever I can be aware of, this is my world, this is my all. And I have to, you know, put all these 5 heaps together and try to do my best to keep safe, keep well, struggle for survival as best I can. And this is all I have. And then Sariputta said to Nakulapita, actually, you know, but a wise person, somebody who is interested in the teachings of the Buddha and who pays attention to them and who understands them, can appreciate that these 5, body, start with the body, the body is not actually mine. It doesn't belong to me. I don't have control over it. I can observe it aging, getting sick, and coming to the point of death. And there's nothing I can do about it. And if I strive and struggle to take care of it, protect it, and make it mine, then that's a source of tremendous suffering for me. And one can see this, Nakulapita. And so one needs to let go of the body, let go of concerns, let go of fears and anxieties around the body, and recognize this body is not mine. This body is part of nature. And in the same way with feelings, feelings arising and passing, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, are not mine. They don't have anything to do with me. They're not in my control. They are not a source of guidance for me. It doesn't help me to follow the pleasant and turn away from the unpleasant feelings, but just to recognize them as not me and mine. And to let go of feeling, of identification with feeling and perception, all that we think we know. Sariputta said, you know, don't let perception be yours. Don't let it belong to you. Don't define yourself by what you perceive. And don't think that you know what you perceive. All that we perceive is past history. The Sariputta didn't say that, I'm saying that. All that we perceive is past history. It's just what we've learned. Can we be sure that we're right? Is it really the only way to look at things? What Sariputta said to Nakulapita is, just recognize that perceptions are not yours. They don't belong to you. Let them go. Perceptions are a source of suffering for you. Drop them. And then your mind will start to be healthy. And then again with Sankara, he said the same thing. A foolish person considers their thoughts, views, opinions, and so forth to belong to them and to be therefore inherently correct. Not so. Remember, Nakulapita, these are not yours. These also actually come from the past, and they're conditioned. Drop them, let them go. And consciousness itself, which we so identify with. Sariputta said, remember, a wise person will appreciate that consciousness itself is not mine. It's not me. It doesn't belong to me. One can observe it, but not own it. And so Nakulapita, a wise person, will let go of consciousness, let go of their sense of self around consciousness. And so Sariputta explained in this way, through the lens of the 5 Khandhas. It's like the 5 Khandhas times Anatta. It's just one framework. And I really love this framework. I think this is a really key way in which we can break through delusion, illusion, and of course, let go of suffering, because it's just a whole, actually not one whole heap of suffering, it's 5 whole heaps of suffering to identify with the 5 Khandhas. So for me, this is a really beautiful teaching, and Nakulapita understood, and he was very grateful. And as often happens in these beautiful teachings, you know, at the end he's rejoicing and really supported by the teaching, and hopefully goes away and puts the teaching into practice. We don't hear about what happened to Nakulapita. So I thought I'd like to share this teaching with you all, and you know, consider perhaps the kind of illusory nature of these 5 heaps, their distortion for us, and the grip that they have on our hearts, you know, how fearful it is for us to face our identification with these. It's really fearful, it's really scary, I find, because, you know, if we're identified with our bodies, it's really quite terrifying, because we're all going to die and we're all getting old. And after a certain age, it starts to become more and more apparent. And, you know, I can't do what I used to do. It was very touching. The Sutta study on Monday, we were looking at the end of the Ratapala Sutta, and there's a conversation between this monk, Ratapala, and the king, Karavya. And the king is 80 years old, and he's quite doddery from the sound of it. And at one point he says, it's very touching, when I lift up my leg and try to put my foot down in a certain place, it will go to a different place. It's so beautifully described, almost like clinical analysis of the situation. Doddery, you know, can't walk in a straight line, poor thing, maybe losing his balance and maybe falling over sometimes. How many people does that happen to as we get older? I have so many friends who've got to this point where they've, you know, they've not been able to actually live alone because they keep falling over, breaking this, breaking that, covered in bruises. How horrible, how awful. Old age is misery, pretty much for everyone. Sometimes I think people who die younger and suddenly, which is a number, you know, significant number of people, isn't it? Keel over at some point of a heart attack or a massive hemorrhage or stroke. You know, sometimes I think, well, if they're a decent age, that's quite good, really. I mean, it's not a bad way to go. You think like that. It's shocking for everyone else. Of course, it's horrific for the people who are left behind. But one can think, well, for that person, it spared them. They've been spared the vicissitudes of old age and moved on to another situation, perhaps a better situation, you know. In some ways, one could almost see that as a blessing when we consider what can happen as we get older. It's a real workout. Goodness me. They talk about the step sequence, don't they? That you're on a sort of level and then something happens and you suddenly plummet to a different level of functionality. And then you go along, sort of have a bit of time to get used to that. maybe a little bit of time, maybe not much time before the next thing happens, and you go down to another level. And this incredible adjustment that's required for older people. Actually, I think that the old person's journey is a heroic journey, and it's all hidden from the eyes of youth, isn't it? Because young people have no idea. We were talking the other day about how there was a time when we thought 30 was really seriously over the hill, tragic to have to be 30 plus. But this is how we perceive things when we're young. And young people are it's difficult for them to really understand what it's like, isn't it, for older folk? What a hero's journey is happening right in front of them, the courage that's required. And we have to work with all these fears as we slowly actually have the opportunity, if we're lucky, in some ways lucky enough to get old, we do have the opportunity to let go in a more gradual fashion of the body. We all have to let go of the body, and maybe actually having to let go gradually through much, much suffering and getting maybe even to the point where we're quite ready to let go completely. We're really waiting even. We really want even to be free from this body. That's in some ways, one could say that's a blessing, to have the fullness of the human experience and to be able to sort of release the grip slowly, painfully, but with a sense of release, a sense of freedom even, because in the end the body becomes nothing but a useless burden for us. Like the Buddha said, his own body at the age of 80, like a cart tied together with straps of leather, all the bits dropping off and having to sort of shore them up, to keep going at all. And I'm sure many people could relate to that image and feel quite comforted by it in old age. So yeah, it's sort of one disaster after another for people after the age of about 80 or maybe less, I don't know, 70 in some cases, 90 in others. And this is what we're all looking at, aren't we? This is the trajectory that we're looking at. So the beauty of this teaching is that there's the encouragement to do the work now, while the body's, the Buddha said in this case, not actually healthy. Don't think it's healthy, but it's less unhealthy. It's less decrepit than it's going to be. And so to be able to do the mental work, the heart work, of just really viewing this body again and again and letting go of all the anxiety and the fear and the stress around the body. How do we let go? We let go by experiencing it, by actually contemplating, considering what is this trajectory? What is going to happen? How is it going to be? Where am I going to end up? We know where we're going to end up at the end of the day, but what's the journey going to be like? How's it going to play out? Am I ready to go into an old person's home? Am I ready to go into a care facility? Am I ready for people to have to take care of all my bodily functions for me? Am I ready for that? Would I be able to embrace that with a gracious heart and practice loving kindness for all those dear people who are helping me? This is something to consider. Can we make it like the next great adventure, an opportunity for spiritual growth? And of course we can. And we can start training now for this, because as many people say, it's not the passing away that's the real concern for us often. Death isn't such a concern because it's the end. It's what comes before that that we worry about, we stress about. So we can therefore bring our attention to these concerns and anxieties and really consider and feel what you feel. And then we can come to terms with possibilities and be ready, and make the right decisions then at the right times, rather than, as we can see, people who have a lot of attachment to their youth, to their health, seeming health, to their bodies, will often postpone the important decisions they need to make for their well-being because they don't want to think about it. They can't go there. Why? Because they're afraid. So we can face the fear, and we can then really take good care, timely, wise decision making at the right times, and help everyone around us, including ourselves. And then we don't have people having to deal with someone who's recalcitrant, who's really upset about what's happening, the inevitable process. How painful to witness people who are just unable to accept reality. And it's so hard in old age to see that happening for people. So to be old, can we be old and wise? That's the opportunity, isn't it? To be old and wise, rather than old and needing lots of careful handling, So I really love this sutta, and I really love considering old age in these ways, and bringing in all the other khandhas also, because, for instance, with perception and with mental formations, with sankhara, or choices, the will, our agency. That's another way of looking at sankhara. And perception, looking at how we view the world. So in these terms, with these lenses, we can really consider again, how, as we get older, we tend to concretize things to some extent. We know what's what, we think. We think we've got it down because we've lived a long time. We know, we've been through a lot. We've had a lot of life experiences. And I'm not really meaning to joke about that, because it's true. One has, to respect. Older people than ourselves have had a lot more experience, they know more about certain things. But thanks to the Buddha's teaching on the 5 khandha, he was really telling us that what we think we know is really up for questioning. And it's really worth allowing ourselves to dismantle all our firmly held views and opinions about this, that, and the other, because they're just a source of suffering for us. It doesn't matter whether we're right or wrong at the end of the day, although the sense of being right is perhaps part of the problem often, because when we think we're right, we're more likely to really hold on to an idea or a view. But actually, that is suffering for us. And definitely I'd noticed myself as I get older, and in others, because we're all the same in many ways, aren't we? We tend to hold on more tightly to our sense of the way of things, the way of it, the world as I know it. We tend to reify it, and we become quite resistant, actually, to other possibilities. When I was younger, I was much more open. I really was. They say in monasteries, it's quite good to come into the monastery as young as pos, because the older you get, the harder and more painful it is, because people will tell you things and you have to be like a sort of a baby to start with, like an empty slate, and your job is just to not have a view about anything. Which is quite difficult, isn't it? But to let go of your views and just let other people tell you how to do this, that, and the other, and just learn from others. That's what's expected of a novice. Doesn't matter how old you are. But if you're older as a novice, then it can be extremely difficult. And I've seen people literally banging their heads against the wall in frustration because the young ones are telling them what to do. And it's unbearable. It's unbearable. It's just not right. It shouldn't happen, etc. So very difficult to train the mind at any age, but particularly as we get older. But it doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means we need to make more effort to pay attention. And we can do that because we often have more resources. We often have more wisdom. So we can apply our wisdom to breaking down, to letting go, to dismantling, to deconditioning any and every fixed view that we might cherish about this world, because we don't know. The Buddha was telling us, we don't know. Whatever we think, the truth is always other than that. Whatever we think, question mark, question mark. And that's a beautiful practice, I find. One can apply this in everyday life as a constant recollection, a constant spur, encouragement to mindfulness. Because whenever I have a thought about something, I have a view about the way things should be done. Just bringing in the question mark, is that so? And just considering that. And then what often happens for me is that I can see how much I'm cherishing the view, because I'll have an instant reaction sometimes of, yeah, there's no question about this. It can come in really, really strongly sometimes. And then other times it may be, oh, quite flexible. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm open to other possibilities. And so we get to see, we get to assess the degree of attachment, the degree of selfing around views and perceptions. Oh, how would it be if we could have the eyes of an innocent child looking, sometimes see them out in the prams and, toddling along the street, looking around, and it's all just completely unknown. You sense that, don't you? With little children, they really haven't got a clue. How wonderful is that? To really not have a clue. Perhaps that's our natural state, open wonder, awe, because when we have a mind that's quite empty and where there's no holding happening right in this moment, I'm not defining reality right now. I just open my eyes, and in the seeing, there's just the seeing, and in the hearing, just the hearing. And before the perceptions come in, before I know what I'm looking at, and I've figured it's the neighbor doing that thing, that project, that's the noise I'm hearing. Before that, just before that, there's just the hearing. And it's generally, my sense is, my sense, when we're open to the senses and we're just, receptive, empty mind, empty heart, beautiful, beautiful, amazing, glorious unfolding of what is. Wow. I have to be careful with my words because I begin to sound like I don't know what. And I like to try and talk about the Buddha's teachings, but I don't think it's a wrong take on reality to suggest that when we are purely present, there is a great happiness, a great joy, a great inner well-being that we can experience wherever we are, whatever's going on, because we're not making it anything. We're not labeling it. We're not judging it. We're not defining it as good, bad, or indifferent. So this kind of openness, innocence is, I think, the result of putting these teachings into practice. And in the words of Sariputta in this sutta, it's really the ability to let go of the sense of self, let go of everything being referenced here, to this one. We don't have to fight every second for survival and be judging and assessing every situation for its potential to either serve us or harm us. We don't have to do that. We really don't want to do that. We are programmed to do that to a great extent. So we can look at that. And we get to the point where we come really deeply into the body and mind, and we can see this instinctual behaviors, instinctual, really visceral energies that propel us towards selfishness, self-centeredness, because it's this one that we want to protect and this one that wants to survive. And we get to really look very deeply at our conditioning, come right to the core of the matter, which is the conceit, I am. We can come right to the core, and we really actually are invited by the Buddha to come to that place, the existential, the fundamental wish to live, the drive that we're all carrying, and that's actually behind all of this, and to really see the energy of that, feel the energy of that, feel the grip, feel that hand on your throat. It's just like that. We're pinned to the wall by that. We're cornered by that. It's got us. Mara's got us, and in order to defeat Mara, we have to come right to the heart of the matter, which is our wish to exist at all, our wish to live at all costs. And you can see from that perspective that everything we're doing is feeding that, nourishing that, strengthening that. So to come to the place of fear, in short, to come to the place of where we have this survival instinct, and things can help, things like fasting, things like meditating, things like noticing when somebody threatens our views about something we really care about, or something we think we need in order to survive. And someone's saying, do you really need that? There are times, often in our very intimate relationships, because we go deeply together with the other. And so they might touch on these places for us. Deep-rooted fears, anxieties, deep-rooted holding to the sense of self. So we can investigate all of this and allow ourselves to feel the fear that can come up when we question our deep-held, deep convictions, our deep ideas and views about how we should live, how we should survive, how important it is for us to survive. The Buddha, again and again in his previous lifetimes as a bodhisattva, so many times he actually gave up his life willingly. He actually sacrificed himself, the body, the entirety of his experience in that lifetime. He gave it away to feed the tigers, or, all sorts of reasons that you think, well, really? I don't know if I'd want to do that. I don't know if that would be such a great idea, but he did, because he was developing the ability to let go and to develop the ultimate generosity, which is to be willing to let go of this one in the service of the other, or in service of a greater good, or some sort of, to give some sort of benefit to some other being or beings. And so his acts seem sometimes very extreme, but we can understand that he was on a spiritual path, and he was willing to let go of everything. And even without the actual knowledge, without the spiritual faculty to appreciate that this is totally fine, of course, because there's nothing to hold on to. He didn't actually know that at the time, because he was not an arahant. So he would have felt tremendous fear, tremendous resistance to what he was moving into. So yeah, a lot of courage is required for us, because we have to break through these illusions, these delusions, and this strong, strong sense of self, and therefore self-protection. It's a warrior's journey. It really is. Get the sword of wisdom, you know, carry the sword of wisdom, and, you know, to keep cutting through, cutting through again and again, all our thoughts, all our views, all our opinions. And we're recognizing that oftentimes the ones we hold tightly to, the ones that are hard to relinquish or even hard to question at all, these are the ones that circle around our sense of survival. And even that has to be examined, examine it, question it, and be willing to just loosen the grip. And if we can die before we die, oh my goodness, this is the path. This is the goal. Nothing to fear then, and a recognition then, at the very same time as we let go of all of this selfing, the recognition that there was never anything we needed to protect in the first place. We're just protecting an illusion. What a relief to be able to see that and to be able to fully let go. So these are just a few words about the Khandhas in the light of this sutta. And so I think I'll stop here and make some space for any questions, comments, or reflections. Anyone?
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So let me just open up the view. And yeah, anyone who'd like to come in with anything on this sort of topic, Charles Lee, far away.
Oh, hi. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for wonderful teaching, and for the several weeks worth of teaching you've been doing. I found it very, very beneficial. I guess my question is, what is the delusion that, say, somebody who is suicidal is suffering from, if they're, you know, kind of all the way on the other side saying, you know, I'm not my body, I'm just gonna, you know, end it now, you know, even, you know, if you know, because I feel like that there is, you know, there is a delusion there as well. I don't know if you could talk about that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much for asking about that, Chelsea, because probably all of us, or most of us, would know somebody who's taken their own life, and oftentimes we may know people very dear to us who've chosen to take their own lives. And yeah, it's, you know, not really possible to understand being in that situation if we haven't had that experience, I guess, this lifetime. But oftentimes, yeah, my sense is that, you know, people will take their lives in a state of mind that is one of perhaps despair, or having come to the end of a road and, you know, not being able to see a way forward in this lifetime. And that's a very painful thing to consider. I don't know that it's always the case that people are in a very desperate state of mind, but I think it's probably often the case. And from the perspective of the Buddha's teachings, you know, unless we're fully liberated, there's likely to be some kind of defilement, some kind of mental state that's caught hold of a person that is not seen through, you know, that's leading them to harm. Because to take one's own life is actually to kill a human being, and that's quite a heavy thing, harmful thing to do in every case, you know. Having said that, you know, it's really important always to consider the intention of a person, the motivation of a person. And I'm aware that quite often when people commit suicide, they'll have an intention even to try and reduce harm. They'll be feeling, well, my existence is such a source of suffering for people, including myself. It's better. I'm doing everyone a favor, including myself, if I just put an end to this. So, you know, the intentions can be very varied, but oftentimes I'm aware that people can actually have quite selfless motivations and even wholesome aspects to their intention around taking their lives. So we can say that, in short, we don't really know, you know, and we don't know what the kind of outcome of that can be for people, because our karma, our any future suffering or future peace depend upon intentionality. So we can really say it's often very hard to know what the intentions are for somebody when they've gone already, you know, but we can consider probably most usefully, how can we serve the situation in a good way? If we're feeling traumatized and, you know, deeply shocked or distressed about something happening to another person in that way. And so also in the Buddhist teachings, there's a lot of guidance around this. So for instance, if it's somebody we know, we can dedicate good acts for that person. So we have this concept of sharing the merit in Buddhism, which I find very beautiful and very kind of energizing, as well as being comforting. So if we want to help the situation, if someone's taken their life and we know about it, to spur us on to goodness, generosity, doing good acts and considering that person and sharing the merit with that person, we can allow something that for us may be a very terrible thing that's happened to become a source of really energetic practice for the good, you know. And in this way we can bless the situation. Another small point to share with you, Charles Lee, is that at the time of the Buddha, there were some cases of monks who took their lives, quite a few cases actually. And in one episode, the Buddha had given a teaching about a Subha practice. So he was encouraging the monks to consider the foulness of the body. What is this body really made of? Let's really consider that. And they really developed this practice to the point where, just as you said earlier, they felt, well, this carcass that I'm carrying around is so foul, so awful. Why don't I just get rid of it? That would be a sensible thing to do. And so a whole group of monks actually arranged for one of them to take the life of all the others. And then he took his own life, I think. So unfortunate. The Buddha came along and said, this is really very foolish. And he taught them at that point a different practice. He said, okay, stop doing the Subha practice and start observing anapanasati, start observing the breath. You know, quite an amazing episode. The problem, you could say, was ignorance on the part of those monks. Those monks were not fully liberated, fully enlightened. So their mass suicide was considered by the Buddha to be a very foolish thing, very unfortunate thing. There are other cases at the time of the Buddha of monks who took their own life, and the Buddha said, no result, no resultant karma. Why? Because they were already arahants. They were already fully liberated. And in those cases, those people had terminal diseases that were very severe, a lot of pain, couldn't do anything about it. So they chose to end their own lives. They didn't ask anyone else to kill them, but they just killed themselves, just cutting their throat with a knife. In 2 cases I can think of in the suttas. And yeah, so in this case, the Buddha said, actually, no harm has been done. You can't harm something that doesn't exist. But if you think something exists and you harm it, then that's unfortunate, because there's a consequence for that, which is a kind of suffering will ensue, ongoing suffering will ensue until that is seen through and one can become free from that. So I hope, in short, Charles, I hope that's a good answer for your question, good enough answer. But if there's anything you'd like to come back with, please feel free. Okay. We have a few more minutes if anyone else wants to come in with anything. You're very welcome. Got a question here from Kursula. Thank you.
Dealing with society, societal norms. Like society says, well, you're a meditator, you're a conservative, you're a liberal, you're a athlete, you're on and on. So, you know, we peg ourselves into these boxes as a conforming to society almost, but I guess it's just about how do we attach to that? Like, you know, the example of people saying, oh, well, you're an athlete. Well, if we attach to that and then we get injured, then we're no longer an athlete. But it's always a bit of a conundrum about, you know, how society wants to box us into those. Oh, now I'm a senior because I'm 65. You know?
Yeah.
You could comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really glad you bring that in, Kursula, because isn't it so? We can be, you know, dismantling our sense of ourself, but we're surrounded by other people who will be seeing us as this or that or the other. And, you know, so we also have to deal with that. And see how we can be kind of drawn into that also. Like, I remember when I was a medical student and we started doing clinical work and we put on the white coat. You put on the white coat and you've got the stethoscope around your neck, and you suddenly become, even when you're like 22 years old, you know, you're a doctor now. Actually, I was fortunate because I looked like a baby, so people didn't think I was a doctor at all. They thought, what's she doing in a white coat? Like, but you know, it's amazing, the white coat syndrome. So people will, you know, treat you in a totally different way. You put this on, you put on a military uniform, you know, you become a soldier. You put on the nurse's uniform, you're caring now. You might not feel it, you know, but you know, or the priest, you know, the nun, what an archetype it is. And then we have the opportunity, whatever it is, athlete, mother, worker, whatever it is, therapist, we have the opportunity to keep aware, you know, of the way in which we're being viewed and maybe treated, depending on what we're modeling for people, and not to get identified with that. So that's tricky sometimes. Sometimes it's quite pleasant and sometimes it's quite unpleasant, the way that people relate to us. We can also notice that when we know people quite well, they can develop ideas and thoughts and views about us. And how that can kind of solidify our relationships and even us, even our sense of who we are. If we're constantly being told or viewed through a certain lens, we can start to feel, yes, this is who I am. And it can be quite interesting, can't it, when we practice meditation, to begin to see how much we are, in a way, influenced and affected by other people's views of us and views of everything else as well, of course. So it's a tangled web. It really is a tangled web, to be looked at by others and judged by our appearance, our color, our gender, you know, our place in society. All of this is part of our work. Yeah, there are many, many layers, aren't there? Many ramifications of this selfing and othering. And just as we, I just like to finish by saying, just as we create ourselves and find ourselves created by others and have to work with all of that, to notice, first of all, to understand it, to see it, and then to see how we can let it go. Well, actually, it falls away through the seeing of it. But also, let's remember, we do the same thing to other people, don't we? So we do have a tendency to categorize others, to feel that we've got them sussed, you know. We can say what sort of a person this is or that is. Let's remember also that as much as it's actually quite painful to be created by others, it's really painful to create others, and see how much we can view others with the innocent eyes, you know, the fresh eyes. Because when we do that, we free them, we free each other, we give each other the space to actually change, to evolve, you know, to be what we really are, which is nothing but a kind of process, an unfolding, you know, of nature. So yeah, let's see how much we can free ourselves and also free others. The two really go together. The two is the same. It's the same process, isn't it? So thank you all so much. We've come to the end of our time together. I think it would be lovely if you've got a couple of moments to sit together just for the last minute, and then I'll ring the gong at the end. Thank you so much for being with us, all of you.